Antonio Pierce opened up Raiders training camp on Tuesday. Find out what he had to say about the all-important quarterback competition and who's starting training camp on the PUP list. That plus a whole lot more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 24th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're giving us a look on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show grows each and every day, and that's because of your support and because my man Ari does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we definitely shout him out. We definitely appreciate him. Hit him up on Twitter, and I seriously mean that when I say hit him up on Twitter. Let him know that you appreciate that as well. At Ari Produces on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at your boy Q254 and the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. In segment number 3, we'll have your calls and texts. Plenty of feedback from Monday's show, Tuesday's show, last week's show. A lot of great feedback that we'll get in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Segment number 2, we'll hear from head coach Antonio Pierce, what he had to say about the all-important quarterback competition, where they stand, as today will be the first day of actual practice, but he talked with us at the Jack Hammett Sports Complex here in Costa Mesa. He did that on Tuesday, and you'll hear a few sound bites from that conversation. Then here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day, and we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. We'll tell you more about them later on in the show. And off top, I know I mentioned that AP, you'll hear from him and coming up in segment number 2 on the quarterback competition. I want you to hear from him off top, just talking about setting a tone. I actually asked him a question about the message that he passed along to the players on his way to the complex before he met with us, and he hadn't got to that part of it yet, but he did let us know the message he was going to send to the players about the opportunity that they have in training camp. And obviously it's a little bit different coming from a guy who's been there, done that, and won a Super Bowl ring. Here's Antonio Pierce kind of setting the tone for the Raiders in training camp here in Costa Mesa. Check it out.
I haven't told him that yet, so we'll discuss that this afternoon. But the key thing is, when you go to training camp and you go away, it's the brotherhood. It's us against the world. The good thing about it, we can't have fans here, right? So we're going to have to entertain one another. And sometimes that's a good thing. When you're in training camp at home, you get to run to mom and dad and the family, the kids and the wife. Well, when they get to that hotel, it's each other. It's one another. So same thing for the coaches. I think it'll be really critical for our team to become the tightest unit possible. It's all peaches and cream right now, right? Sun's bright. There's only some dark moments and some dark days. And we're going to have to be ready to go through some adversity together.
So I like that message, straight to the point. And it's funny, I started my radio show on Tuesday just talking about AP and how I really believe he's the right guy for the job, how he's confidence that he has, how his answers are straight to the point. There's no coach speak, no dancing around questions. It's just, hey, this is what it is, right? There's even been times when he's answered questions and I thought, yeah, he probably wasn't supposed to answer that as truthfully as he did, but he does. He's that guy. He's no BSer, right? And so that's what the players talk about him. He doesn't BS them. He doesn't candy coat, sugarcoat anything. He doesn't do any of that stuff. It's just, hey, what's on AP's mind. You know what he wants. You know what he needs, and he lets you know. It's just, to me, and look, I've been wrong. We know that. I've been wrong plenty of times. I'll be wrong plenty more times. I just feel that this is definitely the right guy for this job. I really believe that the Raiders are heading in the right direction with this head coach, Antonio Pierce. I just, again, sometimes my gut feeling is absolutely wrong. I always say sometimes it's gas, sometimes it's correct. I just think that the Raiders are going to be very happy with his head coach. He's going to surprise a lot of people, and I believe this team is going to surprise a lot of folks this year. But just, again, seeing him get off the bus at the sports complex, walk across the grass, just look really comfortable in his own skin, what he was ready to do. And, again, excited about the opportunity that, he has with this team, putting together the best 53 men that they could put out there on the field for these games coming up in 2024 as they not only try to make it to the playoffs, but obviously the goal is to win the division. The Chiefs have done that the last 8 years in a row. I'm not trying to get too greedy. I just want to see them get to the playoffs, but they have an opportunity in front of them, and I think AP has an opportunity to really shock some folks on how good of a head coach he really can be. It's funny. A lot of folks were giving him a lot of credit last year as the interim, right? As he kept the team together. And now it's like, oh, well, he doesn't have any experience, so it's a knock on him. Wait, hold on. You were just singing his praises last year. It's so funny how people change. I say it all the time. I tell the wife this all the time, that people will root for you until they don't. People will root for you. They'll have your back. They'll be your biggest supporters. And all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. And so you just got to get used to it, because, man, there were so many folks nationally all over talking about AP. You got the right guy for the job right there. There's no need to even think about it. Just go ahead and hire him. And then all of a sudden the Raiders go and hire him. It's like, yeah, well, that coach doesn't have any experience. How are they going to be good? He's never been there, done that. He's been thrust into this situation. Like, okay, well, never mind, right? I mean, you get it. You understand the situation. It's just wild to me. I shouldn't even blink and flinch and even think that it's wild, but it still is wild to me. You'll hear more from head coach Antonio Pierce coming up in segment number 2, talking all things quarterback position. Obviously, that's going to be the big storyline, the camp battle between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, the quarterback competition here at Raiders training camp. Now, one of the storylines that I was looking forward to, and I spoke about it on Tuesday's show, I talked about, 3 different competitions I was looking at, or storylines I was looking at. The quarterback competition, again, we'll address that coming up in segment number 2. The health of the offensive line was another one, and then who will emerge as a player that we're not talking about at the beginning of training camp, but we will at some point. Obviously, that third storyline, we won't know until they get out there on the grass. They'll do that today. Excited about that this morning, starting at 10 o'clock. They'll be out there on the grass. And so we'll start to be able to put that storyline together. Who is it that we're talking about that we haven't been talking about? But that's not something we could talk about right now. Quarterback competition, that'll work itself out. AP will speak on it. You'll hear that in segment number 2. The health of the offensive line, to me, I think is a very important storyline. And we found out 5 players that the Raiders are going to start training camp on the PUP list, which is the physically unable to perform list, and also 1 player who retired. And that was something that I really wanted to focus in on. What is the health status? What is the guys that are going to start on the PUP? What's going to go on? And when AP spoke with us on Tuesday, he didn't have that answer yet. He said the players haven't even arrived. They're still in the air. They'll be here sooner rather than later. We'll find out at some point. And finally, we got a text message from the PR department over there with the Raiders, and they said there's 5 guys on the PUP list and 1 guy who retired, and that'll be coming out shortly. Well, it did. So the Raiders PR, their Twitter account put out, they placed linebacker Darian Butler on the PUP list, guard Jake Johanning, guard Jackson Powers Johnson, that's JPJ, the 2nd-round pick out of Oregon, wide receiver Jalen Guyton, and tackle Colton Miller, all on the physically unable to perform list. And then wide receiver Michael Gallup is on the reserve retired list. So what does the PUP list mean? What does that mean for the status of those guys, especially in particular Jackson Powers Johnson, the rookie, and of course the old wily veteran, the steady left tackle Colton Miller? Well, the Raiders have until August 27th to actually activate these guys from the PUP list. And they can activate them anytime, right? They can start out training camp on the PUP list, but they don't have to be on the PUP list for a very long time. They can be activated immediately, right? But if they don't activate them by August 27th, then those players will immediately and at least miss 4 games of the season. The first 4 weeks of the season, they'll miss. So if you're looking for a date, my guy Vegas just hit me up and said, well, what day should I hit the panic button? And I was joking. I was like, well, yesterday you should probably hit the panic button, but I was just kidding. I was like, no, in all reality, August 27th is the day that you hit the panic button, especially when you're looking at the 2 offensive linemen, Jackson Powers Johnson and Colton Miller. Those are 2 dudes that you need out there. Right. And that's what I was talking about in pretty great detail on Tuesday's show. I was saying the health of the offensive line. I knew that we didn't see Colton Miller do any activities during the offseason workout program, OTAs, and mandatory minicamp. He was out there, but he wasn't putting in any work. So I had a lot of questions if he was going to be out there and available. We saw that Jackson Powers Johnson left OTAs early on in the OTA session and didn't return until mandatory minicamp, and didn't really see him do a whole lot. So I was very curious about those 2 guys, and come to find out both guys are on the PUP list. And we actually found out about JPJ off top, and I was like, dang. And then I thought that was the only guy that was going to miss. And then we found out later on that it was actually 5 guys that are missing. So Colton Miller and JPJ, not good. Right. And I'm not going to hit the panic button again. The panic button is supposed to get hit on August 27th. You don't want those guys to miss actual play. I think those are I know that those are 2 starters that are expected to be on that Raiders offensive line. JPJ has had injury history going back to Oregon, right? I mean, I have a guy that's really close to me that I used to work with that's pretty close to some scouts in the Cowboys organization, and the Cowboys really liked him a lot, but they said, well, the injuries that he had in school kind of scared us off. So we put him a little bit further down our draft board, and the Raiders were able to get him in the second round. Hell of a player. I'm excited about JPJ, but he's got to stay healthy, right? And so that's something that is a major concern. And as a rookie, you want to see him get as many reps as possible. Like Colton Miller, I feel like he'll be pretty good and solid and just be able to slide in there when he's ready and able. But you want Jackson Powers-Johnson to get as many reps, get those pads on, get the physicality, get calloused up a little bit, and get ready to go. Unfortunately, he's going to miss rep time. He's going to be able to have time with the, the classwork, the film study, all that good stuff. He'll get mental reps, but he's not going to get physical reps until he's able to be activated off the PUP list. So that's disappointing. The last thing I want to see this Raiders team do is do like they did a couple years ago, where it was take 5 or 6 weeks into the season before they knew who their starting offensive line was going to be. Like, that just can't happen. So that's unfortunate that those guys are starting on the PUP list. Jalen Guyton, also, he's a speedster wide receiver. Thought he was going to compete with Michael Gallup. Well, Jalen Guyton's going to start on the PUP list. Don't know when he's going to get back. And Michael Gallup, reserve retired list, never got an opportunity to play with the Raiders, only was in the league for about 6 years. He's only 28 years old, still a young dude, but injuries just got the best of him. I mean, I know when the Raiders even signed him, I thought, man, it's going to be tough for that guy to make the roster. He's a guy that has had some things go on in his life, including his brother committed suicide while he was a member of the Cowboys. He's dealt with injuries from ACLs and just never really came back and to be the guy that he was. At one point, Michael Gallup was a hell of a, probably number 2 wide receiver, but I thought on this Raiders team, he could be, maybe a high 3 or a low 4, right? I thought that was his range. Obviously, he's not a 1 or a 2. He probably was more likely going to be a 4 if he was going to make the roster at all, but it's obviously not going to happen, as he is now on the reserve retired list. So there's a little bit less competition. I was talking about Trey Tucker before, how I really want to see if he's able to step up and be that guy. I think they're going to lean a little bit more heavily on Trey Tucker, as early on in camp there won't be any Jalen Guyton, and there sure won't be any Michael Gallup, as he's on the reserve retired list. And real quick with JPJ, a lot of folks were like, well, what's the injury? What's the injury? It was a shoulder injury that he suffered in OTA. So I don't know if I had mentioned that before, so I wanted to make sure to get that in. But yeah, JPJ with the shoulder injury, at some point he can be activated. But the target date, Raider Nation, put it in your notes, August 27th. You want to make sure that he's activated. Colton Miller's activated. Really, all these guys are activated from the PUP list. But those are the 2 main guys that I'm looking at that really it's important, it's crucial, it's critical that they're in the mix. Before that, you don't want them to miss any game action, especially missing automatically the first 4 games of the season if they're not activated by August 27th. So what's going on with the quarterback competition? That's another one of the 3 big storylines that I had heading into training camp as it gets started today with the first day of practice. Well, we'll hear what AP has to say about the quarterback competition, and also how the defense, the strength of the defense, can help the offense get into a groove and be who they're going to be in 2024. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. It's back in action. The All-Star break is over. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Great last-minute deals, all-in prices, even views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. And views from your seat is so important. I talk about that. But have you ever had that experience where you buy some tickets, you feel like that the seats are going to be really good, and then all of a sudden you get to those seats, or maybe you bought them from someone else and they get to them and they're like, man, these are really a bad angle, or these aren't really good seats. I can't really see. And I mean, of course, if you gift them to someone, most likely they're not going to say that. But if you like go and see them at their seat and you're like, oh man, these aren't exactly what I thought they were. That's why the views from your seat is so fantastic. And that's why I like to talk about that a lot, because it is an important tool that Game Time does provide. Again, they got last minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever the case may be. They've got that all in prices, lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Right now, what you need to do is take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets or any tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Got the opportunity to catch up with Coach Antonio Pierce on Tuesday at the Jack Hammett Sports Complex here in Costa Mesa. First day of actual practice is going to happen today, and then next Tuesday will be the first padded practice. So we're definitely looking forward to that, the ramp-up period, and it's not going to be a slow process. As AP said, there's nothing slow. They're going to come out the gates, and they'll go quick. So I'm excited to be able to come back and tell you exactly what practice looked like and what the intensity looked like in the first day. But of course, as AP met with us on Tuesday, a lot of the conversation, probably the first 5 or 6 minutes of his press conference that lasted about 15 minutes, was all about the quarterbacks and the quarterback competition between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. And that's really what it's going to be. I mean, it's just, there's no denying it. It's going to be that until there's some decision made. So the first question was asked to Antonio Pierce about not having any joint practices and how that's actually going to affect the quarterback competition. These guys are trying to earn starting jobs. Plus, there's a follow-up on a timetable for a decision. Here's Antonio Pierce on not having joint practices and how that can affect this competition.
Well, I think more importantly, when we look at our team, we feel really good about our defense. And I think when you do have competition, you're going against one another, that's a great opportunity to showcase. So regardless of the joint practices, preseason games don't take care of themselves, but we got 16 solo practices for these guys to go at it and compete like they've been doing all spring and let the best man win.
Do you have like a ideal time frame for you on when you want to make that decision on the quarterback?
When it's right, when it's obvious, like okay, it's like a no-brainer. No need to rush it. I mean, but when it's clear and it's evident, then we need to make that decision and move forward.
So he's just excited about keeping it amongst the team. Right, the defense being strong, and these guys are going to work things out. Of course, the preseason will take care of itself, and he said that the decision will be made when it's obvious. Right, he's not putting a timetable on it, which is good. I think it's smart to get it done sooner rather than later, but you also don't want to rush it just for the sake of saying, "Oh, I named the quarterback," and then all of a sudden have to go back and be like, "Yeah, that's not the right guy." Right? I mean, if you have to take the whole training camp, take the whole preseason, you do. If they might not name the starting quarterback until week 1. That doesn't mean that they don't know internally who it is. They just might not tell us. Right. And so I'm okay with that. Again, I hope that they can see, and it's obvious, like AP just said, hope it's obvious sooner rather than later who the guy should be. But again, it sounds like that they're not going to rush the process. They're going to allow it to be a process and get the best guy out there for the job. And so there's been a lot made about Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew and, how they compare and contrast and what one brings to the table and what the other brings. And a lot of the conversation about Gardner Minshew is kind of his attitude, his persona, his swag that he brings, just kind of the guy that he is. And he's kind of a guy that a lot of us have goofed on throughout the course of his career, but he's found a way to win some games, right? And of course, he beat the Raiders last year when he was with the Colts and was one drop pass away from getting into the playoffs. So AP was asked about the swag that Gardner Minshew brings and how that really affects the team in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, both guys got a little swag now. That's kind of cool, right? Aiden had so much last year, but he's kind of picked it up. And then Gardner, just his personality is so unique, so free-spirited, but more importantly, a great teammate. He loves to compete. His attitude, his purpose, each and every rep that he takes, you can see that there's a driven player there that's always been an underdog. And that's a good thing for the Raiders because that carries over to the rest of our team and guys feed off of it.
I like how AP, made sure to include Aiden O'Connell on that. Look, they both have swag, right? Aiden O'Connell more than he did last year. And again, Aiden O'Connell, you got to give him so much credit. That dude was in such a bad situation last year, right? And it's hard to understand how he even got out of it and made something of it, made something of the season and showed progress, right? With all the craziness and, like I keep saying it, chaos that was going on around him, from being a 4th-round pick rookie, from being a guy that, had one guy as a play caller, wasn't getting too many reps, and obviously wasn't getting reps with the first team, to all of a sudden being the starting quarterback, having another play caller, having a different head coach, trying to salvage the season. It was pretty wild, but he did his thing. But you also hear what he said about Gardner Minshew and what he brings to the team and how his personality is infectious. And, that's kind of like AP. AP has an infectious personality where it's easy to get behind him. It's easy to follow his leadership because he has that kind of personality and that like I said, I guess not responsibility, just kind of the guy he is, right? I guess personality is the way to put it. It's just infectious, and he carries himself like that. And again, leadership it's easy to follow somebody when they lead like that. So pretty good words right there he had to say about Gardner Minshew, but I like the fact that he included Aiden O'Connell in that as well. So there was a question asked about, well, okay, as of right now, which was Tuesday, where does the competition stand. And matter of fact, Paul Gutierrez from ESPN, he actually asked the question, and it was a very short answer from AP. So there was a follow-up by Paul. Here it is. Check it out.
Where it was when we left spring.
So did they even? Somebody taking the lead? Or?
We got some more practices to go at it, to be honest with you. You know, I don't think it's fair to do it. I mean, the offseason, there's not pads on. I mean, O-line, D-line, you know, the way that's working out with protection, it's different when we get the pads on. I think you get a better feel for it overall. And then also guys just get into the system right away, you know, in the spring, learning it. So there could be some days where, you know, Aiden looked better than Gardner. There's some days Gardner, and then there's some days they both look bad. So they both look good, to be honest. So I think, you know, it'll take its course while we're here in Southern California.
So nothing has been taken care of yet. Everything is basically square one as training camp gets going today, as these guys get on the field. And again, look, nobody separated themselves in my eyes in mandatory minicamp or OTAs at the time that we were out there at the facility. Nobody did anything that was like, wow, that's impressive. That's your starting quarterback right there. And, you know, there's days that Aiden's going to have good days. There's days that Gardner's going to have good days. And as AP said, there's days that neither one of them's going to have a good day, or maybe both look really good. So, you know, I think that these guys are very similar. The question for me is like, you know, just what Aiden O'Connell's ceiling looks like. I think we kind of know what Gardner Minshew's ceiling is, but how much better can Aiden O'Connell get? I think that's what we're all waiting to see here at training camp. But right now, everything is square. Everything is square and even, and they're going to separate themselves as they separate themselves. Just got a couple more quick sound bites from Antonio Pierce as he met with us on Tuesday at the Jack Hammett Sports Complex. And this was a question asked by Adam Hill, and I love the answer. It's a short but sweet one, but he was asked about, you know, a player's status, and he was really talking about Gardner Minshew because he has been a starter in the league. He has, played for multiple teams. He does have a lot more experience than Aiden O'Connell. So how much the player's status in the league will determine who wins the starting job. Very short but sweet answer from Antonio Pierce.
Zero. Best player for help the Raiders win games is all that matters.
I played that answer right there because I've been stressing that a lot. Right. And I've been saying that it doesn't matter to Antonio Pierce where you were drafted, how much money you make, who drafted you, what the initial thoughts were on you. He wants the best guys out there for the job. He's going to let it be known that the guys that work their tail off and earn that job. And he's talking about competition at every position. And look, we get it. There's certain guys that, yeah, there's competition, but we already know, like Max Crosby's not getting beat on the depth chart. Devontae Adams is not getting beat on the depth chart. Like there's certain guys that you know who they are. Colton Miller's healthy. He's the left tackle, right? It is what it is. But being able to have that competition and for everyone on that roster to know that you've got to put in the work, you've got to go ahead and make it happen. That's the only way that you get better as a team. So I love the fact that he's like, it don't matter at all. It don't matter where you were drafted, what your status is. The best guy that can lead this team to victory is going to lead this team to victories. The final soundbite has to do with the defense and just how confident he is that the defense can actually help the offense get ready and kind of get them fine-tuned for the season because, well, the defense is really good and the offense has to go up against that each and every day here at training camp.
Yeah, just how comfortable they are with the system now. Year 3 with Patrick Graham, the communication, the continuity, the ability to play with one another, feel one another. I mean, it was a really, really good spring for our defense. They were gelling well. Add Christian in there. It was like he was with us the last couple of years. So they got to keep picking it up. It is the strength of our team. I mean, there's no need to lie about it. I mean, they're really good, and they got to be good this year.
So there is no joint practice, but the Raiders defense, with the expectations of it being as good as it is, and you know that they're not going to slow down, not with the guys that they have. I keep calling them bloodthirsty Pirates. When you have a Max Crosby and you have a Christian Wilkins, you have a Malcolm Kuntz, you have a Tyree Wilson that's got something to prove. You got a Robert Spillane, right? You've got Jack Jones. You've got Nate Hobbs. You've got all these guys that, have a little edge to them. They want to be the best at what they do. They're not going to let up at all. So if the offense could have good days against that defense, all that could do is sharpen them up and get them ready for the upcoming season. And that's what Antonio Pierce is expecting. That's what he's banking on. And you heard what he said. Look, that's the strength of the team, and they're going to have to be the strength of the team. This team will be led by the defense. They'll go as far as the defense goes. Obviously, the offense has to complement them. But what we all know, we've been talking all offseason, is that this is the defensive team. This is a defensive team led by a defensive-minded head coach. That's exactly who they are, and AP let it be known right then and there. The competition starts today, but that's what AP had to say about the quarterbacks and the quarterback position, and also the defense, how it can make the offense a lot sharper and get them ready for 2024. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts throughout that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll get right to that after I tell you about eBay Motors. It's passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. This call comes from, I believe, Danny Freeman from Montana. He's calling to talk about the Raiders rankings according to ESPN, the power rankings that I talked about on Tuesday's show. Here he is. I believe his name is Danny Freeman.
It's Danny Freeman. I'm a Raiders fan. I live in Billings, Montana. I think it's crazy that they rated the Raiders 30th or 31st in roster, where we have Devontae Adams, Jacoby Meyers. We drafted the best tight end in the draft, Brock Bowers, and we also have Michael Mayer, who's pretty good. And we got Colt Miller, who's one of the best left tackles in the league. And we got Jackson Powers Johnson, who's supposed to be a beast. The Raiders are being rated as the top 10 defense this year. And you're going to tell me that we're the 31st ranked in the team when we got Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby, Coons, and Tyree Wilson may come on this year. Pierce was 3-1 against the AFC West last year. I don't know how he's 29th in coaching. I think it's all crazy. It's all just hate. It's all just bad talk because we don't have a big name quarterback. The Baltimore Ravens, they won the Super Bowl 2000 with the best defense, and Trent Dilfer at quarterback. So it just shows you don't have to have the best quarterback to be really good. But yeah, that's just my thoughts for today. Go Raiders.
Danny, thanks so much for the call. If your name's not Danny, my bad. It just sounded like that. I apologize, but a really good call. And yeah, the thing is, I try not to react to rankings like this or top 5 or top 10, whatever the list is. It just kind of blew my mind that out of all the teams in the league, and there's some teams that are really, they know right now, as training camp is opening up, as they have their first day of practice, that they ain't going to be worth the salt, right? Like the Carolina Panthers will probably be picking in the top 2 or 3 again in the draft. Right, there's teams around the league for the Raiders to be looked at as the 32nd team, the dead last team with all the talent that they have on the roster. I was like, come on, you got to be kidding me. Antonio Pierce be ranked so low as a head coach, right? Even though he was praised last year. Tom Telesco was praised as the Chargers GM. Now all of a sudden, now the front office is trash, right? It's just like, okay, and I get it. The quarterback is a question, but there's other quarterbacks across the league that are questions, right? I mean, it's just that simple. So it's just, to me, it's funny, but. Yeah, it's like I said, it's something I try not to overreact to. I try not to stir the pot and get Raider Nation fired up, but that was one that kind of blew my mind. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Hopefully I got your name right. If I didn't, I apologize. If I did, right on. I made it happen. Up next, got a text from Ghost in the 804. It says, hey, Q. Ghost here from the 804. I would love to know when we as the nation are going to accept the fact that we'll always be hated by the NFL, the media, and other fan bases. Al Davis literally said that he would rather be feared and imitated than be respected, and yet every time ESPN or Colin Cowherd hates on us, people are up in arms about respect. As Raiders will be in the role of the villain forever, I am one. I'm okay with that. My dad raised me a fan since the 70s, and I keep the tradition going even after his passing. In fact, I even left some of his ashes in the black hole in Oakland. Thanks for all that you do. Rest in peace, Pop and Raiders. And then he also included in the text a bunch of pictures of his car all rated out. So really good stuff. Ghost in the 804. Thanks so much for that. I appreciate you. And yeah, it's not even about getting up in arms, right? It's just silly to me at times. And I know, ESPN or Colin Cowherd, and I'm not really a Cowherd guy, but okay, he's earned his right. And look, I work for ESPN on the radio side of things. I feel like that at least, I can be somewhat of a voice of reason, and people ask me all the time about the Raiders. So I'm happy that they at least inquire and want to hear what I have to say, because a lot of times they don't know. For the longest, it's just been Paul Gutierrez. He's been the one holding it down as a reporter for the Raiders. Jason Fitz, when he was on the radio side of things for ESPN, he would hold it down for the Raiders. But really, there's not too many. And it's funny. I'm starting to see more and more as I'm doing these shows and I'm doing it with different people. All of a sudden, I'll have guys be like, hey, Q, man, I'm a Raider fan too, man. It's good to have a fellow Raider on the radio station. I'm like, dang, I never heard anybody talk about that. Like Randy Scott, who does Sports Center quite a bit. Big Raider fan. Didn't know until the other day when I did a show with them. So it's funny how there's a lot of Raider fans that never really spoke on being Raider fans. So I'm kind of glad that that's cool. And I hope that more people do it because there's plenty of Raider fans out there that may not have mentioned it that are on the national side of things. So we'll see how it shakes out. But that's an awesome story about your pops. And like I said, your car was awesome, man. Thanks for including that in the text, the pictures of your car. Like I said, really good stuff. Up next, got a call from Raider Meatloaf. He's also calling to respond to the conversation about the ESPN rankings and where the Raiders were ranked, and let us know why he doesn't care about those rankings or any other rankings. Here he is, Raider Meatloaf.
Hey, Q, it's Raider Meatloaf here. Just know that you've been talking about all the projections and everything going into Raiders win and loss record, and I know that you work for ESPN, but it's one of the worst, probably, sports news outlets I think that anybody could listen to. I think a lot of the people on ESPN, sometimes it just feels like they either don't know what they're talking about, or they're a basketball analyst that's breaking down football, or vice versa. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, it's like I understand. I think that people are just so used to the Raiders. Either we'll be at a 9-win total for the season and we'll let them down, or we'll be at a 4-win total but we'll go over the 4. So I think that it's just easy. It's kind of like us saying that, yeah, of course we're going to beat the Broncos. We haven't lost to them in forever, but the reality is I think that we just say that because we've done it. And this year might be a different story. I have no clue, but I don't really care. I feel good about the Raiders this year. I feel good about everything that's happening. And I mean, if you're a bettor, go put your money on the Raiders to at least win the AFC West, or go over their win total, or if you're feeling good about it, win a Super Bowl. But I think that if we have any year to win the AFC West, it's this year. And I hear people talking about, too, the Chiefs, that this is the best roster that they've had with Patrick Mahomes ever. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way this is the best roster that the Chiefs, they just lost L'Jarius Sneed. They did sign Chris Jones. All of their wide receivers are young. They drafted Sky Moore last year. I know the Xavier Worthy hype is crazy, but honestly, I don't think that that's going to work out. I still don't think that they're better than they were last year. All right, man. Take care.
Meatloaf, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, again, I'm on this radio side of things, so I think at times they do have guys a little spread out, a little thin. I'm not going to lie. At times I feel like I'm spread out a little bit thin, but you keep on pushing, you do what you do. But to your point, I feel good about this team as well. I'm with you. I've been saying it for a while. I think the Raiders are going to shock a lot of folks. I think AP is going to shock a lot of folks. I think that they're going to be in the runnings for a playoff spot. Are they going to get it? 9 wins probably won't get them in, but 10 will. Right? Or at least I feel like 10 will. I mean, we've seen 10 not get a team in, but for the most part, if they get 10 wins, I feel pretty comfortable that they're going to get in. I think that they're going to be there. Obviously, health will play a role as long as the offensive line, it needs to get put together. And as we know, 2 of the players that we expect to be starters when it comes to JPJ and Colton Miller are starting off training camp on the PUP list. Hopefully they're there and available before August 27th, or they're going to miss the first 4 games. That would be less than ideal. And as far as going over the win total, yeah, the Raiders have done that the last 3 out of 4 years. So I would go over 6.5 as well. If I, was going to go place a bet, I'd go place a bet right now. Right? I'd hit them up and be like, yep, I'm picking the over when it comes to the Raiders win total 6.5. Like I said, the last 3 out of 4 years, they have gone over that win total. The only time that they didn't was the first year of head coach Josh McDaniels. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a text from Gonzo Raiders. Q. Gonzo Raider here from the 505. Just wanted to send a quick text. First off, thank you for all that you do for the nation. Super hyped for the start of training camp and the season. And like Coach AP said, I will, we will, I believe, we believe. Raiders all day, every day. Let's go. That's Gonzo Raider from the 505. And I think that's a great way to close out the show, right? With the words of AP, I will, we will, I believe, we believe. Raiders all day from Gonzo Raider from the 505. And yeah, I'm fired up too, man. I'm excited. We made it through an off season. It didn't seem like it was a very long off season, but we got here. There's football activities that'll be going on the practice field today, and the Raiders will start building those, stacking those bricks, just like they had in the behind the shield. And he went out and handed out bricks to everybody, and they put their goal, and their team goal on the brick, and they're stacking them brick by brick. They're trying to build something. The building starts today. It's exciting. I'm fired up about it. I think this team has a chance to be special, shock a lot of folks, and again, return to where they need to be, which is the playoffs, and be the first step of them returning to the playoffs consistently. They've got the right coach. I believe they've got the right players. They've got to go out there and get it done. It's a business. It's a business all about production, right? If you produce, you're fantastic. If you don't, you're out. It's just that simple. I think AP is going to be fantastic and get this team where they need to go. Thanks so much for making the Locked On Raider podcast your first listen every day. If you want to check in on any other team that the Raiders will be playing, or just any other team in the National Football League, you could do that. Of course, the Locked On Podcast Network, the NFL side of things, represents all 32 teams. So you can check on any team you want at any time. College, you could check on them. The draft, Major League Baseball, hockey, it doesn't matter. Women's sports. I mean, they've got city exclusive shows. I mean, there's over 200 shows that we have on the podcast network. So definitely check it out. Do a fantastic job continuing to grow the brand, get bigger and better each and every day. Got a shout out to the Locked On Podcast Network because they do a fantastic job. And of course, it's your team every day. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, can't wait to come back and talk about the first day of actual practice. So we'll do that in a major way coming up tomorrow. And we're just about through the first week of training camp. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.